Okay, today we're going to be looking at part 2 of our series on the chain of responsibility. And today we're going to be having a closer look at the safety management systems that support that. My name is Michael Terry. I'm from Momentum Safety and Ergonomics, and this is the 5-Minute Safety Series. Okay, so jumping on to look at safety management systems themselves, and one of the great things about these sort of systems is that the stuff we're going to be talking about today is very specific for transport, but this should integrate into all your other aspects of health and safety, and it will. The systems that we're going to be talking about today really are all part of a standard safety management system, but we're just looking at how they might apply to the transport sector. Now, I guess before we get too far, we should say what a safety management system actually is. And it's one of those ones that's easy to give a fairly glib reply to. It's the system that manages your safety. But the devil, of course, is in the detail here. And if we look at the some of the things that are part of a safety management system, some of the ones that we've got listed on the screen here would be included. Now, it's also important to say that you can try and make sure that your safety system complies to an ISO standard, and the obvious one here is ISO 45001. You certainly don't need to do this, but even if you're not looking for certification, complying with an ISO standard or looking to model your system on an ISO standard is not a bad idea, because it does make sure you've got all the right components. Now we're going to jump ahead now and have a little bit of a look at how this might work for the transport sector. In this one, I've deliberately got the exact components that are talked about in the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator website, the NHVR website. They talk about 4 key parts to a safety management system. So I thought we'd try and align our analysis with that. And the 4 key parts that you can see on the screen here are safety policy and documentation, safety risk management, safety promotion and training, and safety assurance. Now, these are a nice, fairly simple way of summarizing the key parts that you need in your safety management system, and we'll just go through those one by one and sort of look at how they might apply to the chain of responsibility and particularly into transport. Okay, so now let's have a look at safety policy and documentation. And my thoughts about documentation are always going to be the same, and that is that you need enough documentation but no more. Certainly, I'm not a big fan of very documentation heavy systems. I've worked with safety manuals and what have you that are well and truly over 200 pages. I get that some businesses are do need some depth there, but also it needs to be something that can be consumed by people reasonably. So you'll have to work out what sort of fits well for you here. But let's jump on in and have a little bit of a look about what might be included in some of those policy documentation requirements. So I think the things I sort of recommend here are that definitely an accountability and responsibility. You'll need some set that out for different levels of management and who's responsible for doing what. You'll certainly need some plans and objectives. These will be linked to later when we're looking at assurance. You'll need some human resources aspects to do with your training and competency. So we're talking about the documentation here, things like training procedures, those sorts of things. And you'll certainly need registers, and you'll certainly need some plant and equipment details as well as to what is required and what the maintenance requirements are there as well. Getting into more of the detail now, you'll need some operational controls, some documentation to support that. So this is going to look at how you do processes, safe work procedures for loading, unloading, things like fatigue management, those sorts of things, management of weights, those sorts of things are all going to be part of your operational controls there. And you'll also need some management of your suppliers. And when we talk about suppliers in health and safety, we tend to be talking about suppliers of goods and services. So that's going to be your subcontractors, but also looking at procurement and the things that you buy as far as goods are concerned, product, that type of thing. Further, you'll need some good details around how you manage incidents and emergencies, some excellent documentation around these, as well as the processes that we'll look at a little bit later. And finally, looking at how you deal with things that go wrong and improvements. So you're going to have a process and some documentation around management of non-conformance, as well as improvement and performance evaluation. Now these align well to the ISO standards as well, but they're some of the things that I think you need. Some basic policies and procedures around so that your system is well mapped out and people know what to expect. Now, because this is the 5-minute safety series, we're going to take a little pause here and look at the next 3 components in part 2B of look at the chain of responsibility and specifically safety management systems.